So this is a brief lesson in Science of Mind Basics. The lesson is how we personalize our God self and use our ego self for our spiritual self to manifest our experience. We begin, of course, with the universal conscious mind, or spirit. This is the thinker. And as that thinker thinks, it creates the context through which thought can manifest itself, such as in this symbol. And as the thinker thinks, it sows, and what it sows, of course, is thoughts. And as those thoughts fall into that deep, rich soil or soul of the universal subconscious, then the subconscious is waiting to turn those thoughts into things like the soil is waiting to turn seeds into plants. Now here's the key. The soul cannot reject what you believe or think into it. And as it grows, those seeds take form and fall into that form. And here's the thing, the result is always some particular experience or growth. And the key is, all experiences are unconscious effects and have only the meaning you give them. Now let's take a look and see how that sense of the universal personalizes itself. So in this case, we have first cause, the universal thinker, thinking. And when first cause thinks, it populates creation with the context of form and potential, and then leaves its creation alone to discover itself. It's important for you to understand this, because until you wake up and see this context through which you're thinking in the form of this universal, it's hard to understand how to use it, how to relate to it. But as you discover cause within yourself, you will discover your potential and the form your life takes. You will also find two things. You'll find your ego intellect, which will be willful and demanding in character, and you'll also find your spiritual and intuitive self, which will be willing and receptive. Those are all in your conscious mind, your ability to think and choose and initiate. Now, what happens is as you think, you personalize either one or the other, your ego or your spiritual intuitive self. If you use your ego self, you will reach into your emotional memory and recreate old experiences of success, failure, fear, and limitation, which are all the old historical options. And the V is pointing to that subconscious memory you hold within you. On the other hand, if you use your spiritual intuitive self, you will become the agent of cause and the distribution point of love, peace, abundance, and joy. And your willing and receptive nature will reach into an entirely different experience. And as it does, that universal cause will begin to animate whatever you're thinking into an experience for yourself. Now, how do we become separate from this power? Well, if we take a look at this particular lesson, which is how we separate ourselves from God and how we experience that separation, how we heal the separation, this shell represents that first cause, which, when it contemplates itself, manifests the exact expression of itself as relative first cause. And when that relative first cause, which is you and me, begins to think about itself or contemplate itself, then cause gives us an effect and animates that effect into an experience. Now, if we contemplate the effect and not the cause, we can create separation, which creates fear, worry, limitation, and concern. Now, to get that fear, worry, limitation, and concern to go away, we have to turn away from the effect and contemplate the first cause, and that will move us back into correct relationship with God. And when that happens, the effect magically seems to just change automatically. You know, the key here is to understand that when you personalize God, you've got two choices. You either come from that willful, demanding part of yourself or that willing and receptive part of yourself. And when you're willing and receptive and connected to a principle like love and peace or joy or truth, that principle informs you in a different way. So this is just one simple way to perhaps explain how that works. And remember, it's working simultaneously and instantaneously as you think. So watch what you think. And be careful to contemplate the truth about God's love. Hi, Dr. Jim Turrell here, and this is Class 7's Science of Mind 101, The Spiritual Path, and this is all about the soul as the creative medium. Now, we've talked about spirit being the thinker that thinks, and it's conscious of itself, but it thinks into that soul. So let's just do a little exploring of that creative medium that does all the work, creating the perfect demonstration for us every time. The basics: soul, the creative medium and subjective intelligence, law and the use of creative principle, the soul's deductive reasoning, subjectivity, never an entity. The creative medium. We are using the word soul in the sense of a universal soul or medium through which spirit operates. It is the Holy Ghost or third person of the Christian Trinity. Like the creative soil in which seeds are planted and from which plant life comes, the soul of the universe is the creative medium into which the word of spirit falls and from which creation arises. The soul and spirit are not separate. They are two parts of the same thing, each being self-existent and co-eternal with each other. The term subjective mind is used in speaking of the universal soul versus subconscious mind to avoid the impression that the subjective means unconscious. Mind could never be unconscious. The subjective mind is not self-conscious. It only knows to do without knowing why it does. Soul is immaterial. It is the substance and matter of spirit. Soul stuff is not the soul. Rather, it is that part of the soul which we personalize, the undifferentiated substance from which all things are made. It's quite amazing that we have this thing called our soul. And as we think, we create. It's automatic. You can't get away from it. And you can't stop thinking. So you might as well decide what you want to think and think into that soul, that subjective, that universal subjective, an idea. And the minute you do, the soul becomes soul stuff. And that soul stuff begins to react and respond to exactly what is required to bring your either clear thought or your confusion into manifestation. Reading on. Law and the use of creative principle. The creative medium of spirit is the great mental law of the universe. It is the law obeying the will of the spirit. It is the universal law of mind. All law is mind in action. Soul is the medium through which all law and all power operate. Being subjective, it cannot analyze, dissect, or deny. Because of its nature, it must always accept. The karmic law, which means the law of cause and effect, works through the medium of the universal soul, which is the creative principle of nature and the law of spirit. Your subjective mind and my subjective mind is merely the place where universal subjectivity, the creative medium itself, reacts to our personal use of it. Within, there is a creative field called subjective mind, and around which is a field called universal subjectivity. There is one mental law in the universe, and where we use it, it becomes our law because we have individualized it. It is impossible to plumb the depths of the individual mind because it is not really individual, but individualized. Everyone is universal on the subjective side of life and an individual only at the point of perception. We use the universal power every time we think into it. Can you imagine that? The soul's waiting for us to think so it can react to what we're thinking. And the minute we think into it, we individualize its power. That means our power is unlimited in creating an experience for ourselves that passes and surpasses and supplants all other experiences we've ever had. You can think a greater thought and it will manifest in some way, shape, or form if you have the conviction and the belief and the understanding that it's working for you. Read. Use of creative principle. All thought is creative, according to the impulse, emotion, or conviction behind the thought. The medium is a universal, simultaneous presence, and in this presence all live. And that whatever is known at one point in it is known at all points instantly. How can spirit of itself create a new form? I do not know, said Ernest Holmes. As Newton said, the fact that we are able to announce the mystery is the mystery. There are two ways of reasoning. Inductive reasoning is an inquiry into the truth. It is analysis. Deductive reasoning allows an already established premise from the whole to part. God only reasons deductively, since God is truth. That which is infinite does not have to inquire into the truth. Neither spirit nor soul reasons inductively because it already knows. If God reasoned inductively, it could reject certain thoughts, and universal spirit soul can never reject. Soul is without conscious consciousness, but is conscious in relationship to the impressions it has received, whether they be truth or only belief. And with mathematical certainty and precision, backed by the law of its own being, proceeds to execute the ideas given to it. Amazing. God cannot reason inductively. Only we reason inductively. And why? Because we must work our way back to an idea that is absolutely true for ourselves. And of course, the truer the idea, the greater the demonstration. So why not have an idea of complete abundance? Then you might say to yourself, well, why don't I think that more frequently? Because something in that race mind, something in that subjective memory, emotional memory of mine, keeps blocking my ability and capacity to think bigger thoughts. You just got to do it. You just have to take time to write the treatments, make the declaration, submit it to the law. As you do, I guarantee, life will change in a dramatic and profound way. Read none. Subjectivity, never an entity. The creative medium is a medium only, never a person. It is necessary that we understand this because one of the first things a practitioner has to do is to separate the belief from the believer. From the standpoint of the spiritual person, disease, poverty, and happiness and misery are neither person, place, nor thing. An affirmative prayer treatment is a spiritual entity in a subjective world, and it has ways and means and methods to project itself, which the conscious mind knows nothing of, and yet it is subject to conscious thought. Nature is the great no thing, yet it is not exactly nothing, because it is its business to receive the impressions of spirit. Undifferentiated substance is an indeterminate thing having no mind of its own. Its mind is always made up for it. Each person reenacts the nature of God. I know sometimes it's hard to understand and it's hard to accept that we're dealing with a power that's reacting exactly to what we're thinking. And that power knows how to mathematically and with precision create the exact experience of our thought. So you might say, well, I didn't think this idea of being depressed or unhappy, and you're right, you didn't. But you also didn't stop believing in that unhappiness and that depression because you either witnessed somebody else doing it or you were told over and over again that that's the way you do it. So we have to do a lot of work to uncover those hidden beliefs that need to be neutralized and taken away and erased and a new idea put in its place. Now I know too, some people might think this seems to be an awful pie-in-the-sky, Pollyanna kind of philosophy, but I guarantee you it's work to take those old ideas and not deny their presence, but deny power to their presence. There's a huge difference. I'm not denying that I don't get depressed on some things, but I'm also not saying that I don't have the power to say that thought no longer has any influence on the way I think about who I am as a person. I now choose to think a different way, and you can. Here's an affirmative prayer. God's presence is universal and infinite. God is the matter and substance of every aspect of creation. There's not a spot where God is not. I am this expression of God's perfect abundance, and all that I see, feel, and experience is part of God's creation. Right now, I speak my word for abundance. The generous nature of God fills my mind with new and creative ideas and gifts. Each is a seed waiting for my recognition. Each is now received and believed. The divine is loose in my heart, and so too is the idea of unlimited abundance. Thank you, God, for all that you give and so generously expressed by means of this life I have been given to live. Released, my word is now God's idea in action, and so it is. And here's some affirmations. Today, my soul receives and creates my good. Try that. Today, I'm the precious idea of God's good in action. Today, I'm the precious idea of God's good in action. Right now, the creative principle effortlessly supplies all of my ideas, dreams, and desires. Now you try it. Right now, the creative principle effortlessly supplies all of my ideas, dreams, and desires. In this moment, I am abundance made manifest with ease and gratitude. You try it. In this moment, I am abundance made manifest with ease and gratitude. Every aspect of my being is filled with a new productive sense of peace and prosperity with me. Every aspect of my being is filled with a new productive sense of peace and prosperity. Each day is a divine blessing filled with unlimited opportunity. Together, each day is a divine blessing filled with unlimited opportunity. Rest assured, God is in charge and God knows only my highest good. Together, rest assured, God is in charge and God knows only my